Nope. I'll just be everybody else's way.
Hi everyone, so welcome. Again, my name is Carolyn Kain and I'm the chair of Boston SpedPac. Boston SpedPac is the Parent Advisory Council for special education that's mandated by law. Myself and all the other board members are parent volunteers. We all have children in the Boston Public Schools that have special needs, and we provide these general meetings to provide information to help empower parents to advocate more effectively for their children. I want to announce that, is the translator here yet?
Oh, you're supposed to. You double check.
You need translation?
Me understand from Miss Tris, pero so no.
Okay, but we were supposed to have a translator,
I'll
so.
double check right now.
Thank you.
I'll check it out here.
All right. So we're supposed to have Spanish translation if anybody needs it. Patty?
They're not here yet.
Not here yet. Okay, so they'll be coming.
I'll get it ready.
I forgot my roll book, so.
I want to just acknowledge City Councilor Michelle Wu, who's here this evening, and thank her for all of her support for children throughout Boston Public Schools, but especially children with disabilities. With regard to the presentation tonight, we have a number of different topics to go over. Mostly they relate to kids that are older because we're going to be talking about guardianship, the ABLE law, although that could apply to any age. Then I'm going to talk about BDS and sort of other services that are available beyond BPS, including JVS. They're going to talk about transition to work program. So before we do that, though, I just want to acknowledge that we have a number of BPS staff members that are here. So if anybody here has an issue with their child's individual program, they need to talk to somebody in the BPS special ed office about. Those people are on the left-hand side of the room, if you guys could raise your hands. So you can go and speak to one of them directly about issues pertaining to your child. Yes, ma'am.
Who I talk, because I'm trying to get my son into an after-school program. It's kind of hard. It's like, I heard people have been telling me about the TRACE program, because he has autism.
I've actually not heard of that, but maybe someone from BPS can talk to you. And if they don't have the information this evening, then I'm sure they can follow up with you if you want to. No, they're in the back, hon. They have their hands raised? Okay. And the other thing is that a flyer went out recently about the extended school year program.
Oh yeah, I spelled that out.
Extended school year is actually being reduced this year with regard to the amount of time. It's going from 6 weeks to 5, which was last year, but it's also going instead of 5 days to 4 days. If people have issues of that, they need to speak directly to their special ed coordinator if they need longer services for their child. But part of the reason of that is that we have ESY for a lot of students in BPS, and historically, parents who have children that are eligible, only 55% of the kids who are eligible actually show up for the services. So the thought is that, first of all, it's more in line with what the other districts do throughout the state to have it 5 weeks and 4 days a week. But also some parents have expressed that, you know, they wanted a shorter week. But if you have a need for more services that were in line with last year, then you need to contact your special ed coordinator to make sure that the services that your child needs remain in place, and you can certainly use your stay put rights for that particular issue, okay? So we're gonna jump right in because I know that everybody's, you know, time is of the essence for everyone. We have child care next door, and I'm gonna start out with letting Megan talk to you about the Transitions to Work program, and then Attorney Dawn Freedman is going to give you a presentation about guardianship and the new ABLE law. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay.
It's right there in front of the green thing.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Megan. I am an employer account manager for the Transitions to Work program at Jewish Vocational Service. So I'm just going to give a very brief overview of the program, and then I'll turn it over to you guys for questions, because I know everyone will probably have questions. So the Transitions to Work program is a program for young adults with disabilities ages 18 to 35. And we take any documented disability, so physical disability, cognitive, as long as it's documented. The program was launched about 3.5 years ago, and we are funded by the Ruderman Family Foundation, Combined Jewish Philanthropies, and most recently the Commonwealth Corporation. So it's a 12-week training program and the trainings are held at one of our 3 employer locations. So the 3 employers that we work with are Newbridge on the Charles in Dedham. It's an assisted living facility. CVS and Brigham and Women's Hospital. And so for the 12 weeks, we have a group of 8 students on site at the employer's location, and they're there full-time Monday through Friday, and it's a combination of classroom instruction, going over things like work etiquette, professionalism, things like how to speak to your supervisor, what to wear on a job interview, and then the other half of the day, the students get hands-on internships, and they're actually paired up with a mentor from the employer site. So for example, at Newbridge on the Charles, one of the internships we offer is housekeeping. So the student might be paired up with a housekeeper, they might shadow the housekeeper, and then eventually they become more independent. After the 12-week training program, the students work with myself and another staff member to find employment. So the great thing about the program is for 12 weeks, we're able to really assess the students' skills and see where they're at and what jobs would make the most sense for them. A lot of our students do get hired by our employer partners, but many of them already have those transferable skills to apply to another job.
I have a question. Okay, so say like, well, my son, for instance, is like, he could talk, but not completely, he can tell you what's going on. He can't tell you that his stomach hurts or anything like that. Would he be able to work on?
So the intake process for the program is anyone that falls in that age bracket that has a desire to work is independent, which means they can get to our site. They would fill out an application, which I have sent to Diane, and then they would do an intake or an interview with the director. So I would say that's the first place to start, is fill out an application and then have your son meet Madeline, who's the director of the program.
Well, I wish they had programs like this when I was in school.
Does anyone have any more questions? I know that was very brief what I just described, but does anyone have questions about the job placement? And the services are for 1 year from the start date. So even if a student is placed on a job, we're really focused on meeting the employer's needs. So we will do check-ins at the employer site, we'll do phone calls, we do offer some job coaching depending on the student needs.
What if you're out of school? Because I have Asperger's, which is a form of autism. So,
If you're out of school,
yeah.
yeah, as long as you meet the other criteria that I mentioned, like 18 to 35, documented disability,
Ooh, I'm 2 years old.
you can get to wherever our sites are.
Ooh, I'm 37.
I mean, that's something I'd probably have to run by my boss, the director.
But I could pass the 35 if it's
Does anyone have any other questions about how the program works? Yes.
I know you mentioned housekeeping for Newbridge. What are the other
Other examples.
So that's a really good question. She's asking what are the other internship areas at Newbridge on the Charles. So food services, so things like dishwashing and food prep, housekeeping, clerical, administrative type work. We did have somebody working in the library. Where else did they work? I think that pretty much covers it. They're all customer service focused.
Yeah. And what about at the hospital and CVS?
So at Brigham and Women's, we did patient transport and escort messenger. So a lot of the jobs might involve transporting specimens from the labs and also transporting the actual patients themselves. And then for CVS is actually has their regional learning center in our building. And so it's really nice because we have a close relationship with them. The students learn on a mock register, almost identical to what they use in the stores. They cover also things like, organizing the shelves, doing refunds. We do a lot of role playing, so if you get a difficult customer, we teach the student how you would handle that type of thing. I think to date, CVS has hired 15 of our students. Newbridge on the Charles has hired 7. Brigham and Women's hired 1. And since the program started, we've placed 85 students in jobs.
So when you place these students into a job, is it permanent or still 1 year?
Well, I guess the job is permanent depending on how the student does. So we hope that it's permanent for the student. And then we provide support for that student and the employer for 1 year.
Okay, so like, would they lose their SSI benefits?
Everything is very individualized, so it would depend on that person, on what benefits they have.
Hold on, I thought I was only wondering.
Megan, should the student lose their job, would you continue to provide support after that, to find a new job?
That's a really good question also. So that has happened in the past, not a lot, thankfully. It really depends. If it was a severe behavioral issue that was ongoing, and it was something where the student needed to work more on their skills, we really couldn't vouch for that student to an employer because our goal is to develop really strong employer relationships so that we can refer people. If it was something like the student had to leave the job because they moved and it wasn't near their house anymore, or the student got sick, yes, we have helped people where jobs aren't a good match. But our goal is really not to put someone in a job if we think it's not going to work out. In the back.
As a person with all of my abilities, I find it sometimes a little challenging to deal with supervisors and other co-workers. What about children with different abilities? If they're not getting along with a supervisor, would they be able to transition to a different job if there's something else that may fit them better?
So we really hold the students accountable and set a high standard for our students. So just like any one of us, when you go to work, you're going to be working with people with different personalities and different backgrounds. So we really try to teach the students, about what's the word I'm looking for?
Self-advocacy, maybe?
Yeah, and we don't have our employers. We don't want them to change everything around for the students we're referring in the job. So if a student isn't getting along with a coworker or supervisor, our staff might step in and do one-on-one meetings with the student, try to figure out what's going on, maybe have a sit-down with the supervisor, encourage the supervisor to give the student feedback. But we really want the employer to treat the student like any other employee that they would have.
I just know that with us, sometimes it takes somebody going to mediation with us, and I'm just wondering if there's somebody here to go into mediation with them, will they have sometimes less of a voice or less chance to use their voice?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we definitely go to bat and advocate for our students.
And I would think that by creating partnerships with employers, that they understand sort of, what's going on and sort of would, mentor them as opposed to, be harsh with them.
There's a lot of open communication with the employers. There's usually no surprises when we're, giving them a referral. They know, depending on the student, a lot of times the disability is disclosed. They know what to expect. They know maybe what the student's strengths are, as well as some challenges that might come up on the job. In the back.
Yes. It's me or
I'll let her go. She has yeah. Go ahead. Did you? Yeah.
So, is there a limit to how many students it takes per year, and is there a waiting list?
So we serve about 50 students a year and 8 students per cycle. Sometimes there is a wait list, so I know our next session will be in May, and we are going to be working with a new employer that's in the works. So we are currently accepting applications for the program in May. I can't talk too much about it because we're still going over a lot of the details with this specific employer. But if a student doesn't make a session, they can go onto a wait list for the next group.
So I guess you are having more potential new employer to come on board with your program. So I'm assuming hopefully that
as the time goes on, you build up more employer relations so that kids of all, abilities, strong or not strong, they can kind of find some fit within what's happening in, I guess, with other employers.
Yep, so we're gonna have 4 employer sites that we do the trainings at, but we have a huge pipeline of employers that also hire. So, I mean, just to give you an example, we work with Anton's Cleaners, we work with Prime Motor Group, we work with CVS, we work with TJ Maxx. So lots of different industries where we're placing people and jobs.
Okay, so like, what if they like could only do piecework? Could they get enrolled in your agency or
If they could do what work?
piecework? No, piecework.
Stamping on papers, you mean? Is that what you're talking about?
Piecework, like putting like birthday cards together, like card envelope.
Like stuffing on those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like back in the old days.
So again, it's best if you're not sure to have the student fill an application. We have students of varied skill levels. We have some students who have never had a job ever, and other students have college degrees and they're just looking for a program to support them on the job so that they can retain the jobs. So the skill level is very wide. Anyone have any more questions? I hope I covered everything.
No, thank you very much, Megan. Thank you. It's a great program. So next, we're very lucky to have attorney Dawn Freedman, who's going to talk to about the issues of guardianship and ABLE. Does everybody have the handouts that are at the front desk? Yeah. Dawn, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Guardianship is really about decision making, about the ability to make decisions. Guardianship is a protection that the law builds in to deal with people who are 18 or older and who have serious problems being able to make decisions. 18 is, for most purposes, sort of just an arbitrary age. You turn 18 and you have a party, right? There's nothing, your body's the same, your head's the same, your education's the same, everything's the same, but the law says that something's very, very different when you turn 18. Before you're 18, it's your parents who have the legal authority, legal power to make a lot of decisions for you about schooling, about work, about where you live, about who you're with. That way.
Just if you want them to see.
Oh, okay. So that's when you're a kid, that's the story. When you're 15, 16, maybe 14, 15, 16, as a practical matter, as a parent, your legal authority doesn't mean very much. You know, how persuasive you are with your kids really becomes the factor in how well they do and how well they make decisions. But at 18, it really changes legally. At 18, the individual is able to make decisions on his own. Now, we spend a lot of time in the educational system helping people develop skills relating to making decisions about their lives. And that kind of training, that kind of focus is very, very important, particularly in the special needs context, where people may be more dependent on others, may be more apt to just rely on the advice of others. If they're relying on advice of people that we want them to trust, like you, or good people, then that's great. And that kind of compliance with good influence is a nice thing. If the compliance is with bad influences, people can't really evaluate themselves, or they can't figure out what the impact of these decisions are on themselves, then it really becomes a problem. For most people, the law just lets things stand as they are. People grow to be adults, they make good decisions, they make bad decisions, they live with the bad decisions, they benefit from the good decisions. Hopefully they learn from the decisions and they go on. But the law doesn't step in and say you can't decide that. You can control your behavior, but it won't control where you live or where you work. There's no mechanism for doing that, gratefully. But at some level, with people who have less of an ability to make decisions, to sort of see ahead down the road, to understand what the consequences might be of their decisions, Not because of lack of experience, but because to recall what they've done in the past and will apply experiences that they've had in the past to their current situation. This is particularly an issue around medical treatment. What the law says is that for a doctor to provide a medical service to somebody, let's say as an adult, the doctor has to have the consent of the patient. The doctor can't just act, can't do the surgery or provide a medication without permission of the individual involved. For most of us, we kind of take that for granted. We know that, well, we understand some of what the doctor is saying and some we don't, but we can sort of have some sense of the risks involved, and we go ahead and make a decision about it. We do that based on things that we've learned and also just our native ability to evaluate options that are presented to us. We base it on our experience with similar situations in the past that we can remember. Things that went badly or didn't go well, and then we make a decision. But with people who have a reduced ability to manage that, cognitively, emotionally, people who might be overwhelmed emotionally by the thought of a decision, people who don't understand that they have a right to make a decision, or they don't know what a decision is. They're just sort of compliant. They just do what they're told. It's not that they're really weighing alternatives. They're just going with what is in front of them. We really end up with a problem.
So do we go to court and?
Not yet. First, I'm going to talk about ways to avoid court, because you don't want to go to court. You don't want to go to court.
Avoid the law.
No, like do you go to like probate court and something?
Yeah, you can. But that's sort of the last resort. I wanted to start with the things that you really need to think about doing first for many reasons. One of them is the legal one. The law says that before you go to court, you have to show that there's no less restrictive alternative available. That language gets used in special ed, it gets used everywhere, it gets also in legal circles. You'll see it in some of the material at the back of the handout that's really copied from the probate court materials. They say that if we've got a problem with somebody being unable to make decisions, we have to try to address that in a way that is the least much a limitation on his rights and abilities and work as an adult. We have to identify the problem area and try to figure out the smallest way possible to deal with that. Now, so the law talks a lot about alternatives to guardianship, things that you can try before you go to court. And these are the things that really are, there's a good deal of discussion about this in the paper. I'll mention a few of the things. But they really start with training and education. And this really has to be a role in the schools. When you look at your transition plans in the context of your special ed, your IEP reviews and so forth, really from age 14, this whole issue of competency, decision-making, potential need for guardianship in the future is there. It's part of what the law requires to be examined, and the law requires that schools focus on this. If there are deficiencies in ability to make decisions, just like in reading, part of the education of a person as an adult is to make decisions. It's every bit as important as reading. So it should be part of the educational program itself. It should be part of the counseling activities in all of the areas where special needs students are involved. These can be social or church-related or anywhere where there's involvement. The idea is that people can be given options. They can be given choices. Small choices, they can help with the small choices. Learning to big choices. Sort of talking through decisions. You need to make a decision. What should you think about? Well, I should think about things that might have happened to me in the past. I should think about how this is going to help me now. I should think about what are the downsides for it. Is this going to hurt? What about the future? If it's going to hurt now, is it going to be important for me to be able to do this in the future? We really need to, decision making, we do it kind of automatically, but it involves serious decisions or review of all of those things. We really need to look at it that way. So counseling is involved as well. Now, there are many ways that there are even some legal approaches as alternatives to guardianship.
Like what?
Well, one is called a very simple legal instrument called a durable power of attorney. This is a sort of a permission slip. It's something that we can all have as part of our planning, our legal planning. What it says is that I am giving permission to somebody to help me in the following areas, to act as my representative in dealing with Social Security, or with the Boston Public Schools, or with the Department of Developmental Services.
Yeah, but what if he can't, like, my son, he can write, but like hand over hand.
Well, writing, the issue of writing is completely separate. The question about capacity is really capacity to sign a durable power of attorney involves a couple of things. One is that the person has to have the ability to understand his relationship with the people around him. Does he know the people he trusts? Does he know the people he knows? Does he know, can he separate them from the people he doesn't know and the people he shouldn't trust? Does he know you? Can he have the mental ability to have a kind of a relationship with somebody of trust and confidence? Some people don't have that ability. Their cognitive function, their emotional level is just at a level where they really can't recognize separations from themselves and other people. They can't distinguish between family and friends and strangers. But it's not a very high level of capacity that you need to be able to distinguish your parents and your siblings from strangers. So that's one piece of it. Another is that the power of attorney really involves the idea of giving somebody else permission to help you, to act on your behalf. That's all. You're naming a representative. And you have to have the capacity to understand what's involved in that. That you're giving somebody else permission to act on your behalf in areas that you've spelled out in this thing. It takes a certain level of capacity to be able to do that. Most people do have that level of capacity, some don't. So that's one of the alternatives. And what that can do is it gives you, the parent, permission to talk to these agencies on behalf of your child, so that there's less of a risk that they're going to get, sort of faked permission from the child, directly, or they'll talk the child into something that the child really shouldn't be involved in. It gives you permission to act on his behalf and speak on his behalf. The healthcare proxy is another one of these alternatives. This is it's a document, it's a piece of paper. You can get them all over the place. You can get them on the web. Healthcare proxy is the same idea. What it says is that if I sign this, and if I can't make a decision about some medical thing that's supposed to happen to me, that I'm identifying somebody else who has the authority to make it for me. I'm saying that my mother or my father has my permission to talk to the doctor, go over the informed consent forms, and decide whether I should have surgery or chemotherapy or whatever the decision is in front of me. Now, healthcare proxy also can't be signed by anybody. First, you have to be 18. You have to be an adult. Secondly, you have to have the ability to understand what's involved with it. And it's similar to with the power of attorney. One thing is that you have to understand the relationships that you have with the people who would be appropriate to consider for this. You don't choose strangers to help make serious medical decisions for you. And if you can you don't necessarily have to choose a parent. It could be a sibling, it could be a friend. But the idea is that you have the ability to sort of weigh whether this is really an appropriate person to serve in this role. You may make a bad decision about it. We all make bad decisions. But the issue is whether we have the ability to make the decision. Or do we really lack those skills in our minds and our brains to be able to do that? So that's another one. There are other things too that you can do with bank accounts. You can set up bank accounts that could require 2 signatures so that a person can't withdraw all the money himself. You can sort of structure help set up the person's, if he has some income and resources, you can set things up so that he has access to some but not others. So that you want him to have some access to things you only learn by having some risks, and you're going to make bad decisions, you learn with that. You just don't want to make bad decisions with something that's really important. So you sort of separate things out. If people have close relations with family or friends, or if they're in a group arrangement or in school, then it's more likely that they're going to have people available to help them make decisions. And those people are less at risk of a need for guardianship. So those are all kind of alternatives to guardianship, things to think about pursuing before you go that route. Well, actually, even let me, a couple more. One is that there's a form in your school packet with the Boston Public Schools that once you are, well, actually 16, because you don't have to be in school anymore, but at 18 you have the ability to make a decision about how, if at all, you want your parents to be involved in the review and decision-making about your IEP.
Yeah, I understand. I see what you're saying, but it's like, what if like I said, what if the child's like can't, like he can talk but not to put, he can tell me what's going on.
Well, I want to address your child specifically because I think that's maybe a good case. But what I'm talking about here, sort of, if you look at the broad brush, something like, I don't know, 15 or 16% of school-age kids are categorized as in need of special education or in some kind of special ed programs.
What society calls that?
That's a lot. Well, I didn't say abnormal. But that's that group. That's the special needs. That's the Boston SpedPac group. Some kind of percentage like that. Now, that's a huge number of kids. All those kids turn 18. Nobody's thinking that all of those kids need guardianship. The vast number, I think, would fall into this category that with education and counseling and some alternatives and some help, they have the ability to make decisions about their lives in a decent enough way. We get to the point, though, of you look at it, but you got to look at everybody individually, and you're going to look at somebody and conclude reasonably that they just don't have that ability to make a decision. They can't, these little ways of tweaking things and providing support. One is called supportive decision-making. There are all these approaches that are used to help people who have some lessened ability, but still some ability to be able to function. And most people with special ed needs are going to be in that category. But we are going to reach some who are not capable. We just can't, they can't make or communicate decisions. It's really the twofold thing. Not being able to make a decision means that if a doctor is talking with them about something simple or complex, they're just going to have no ability to understand the risks involved or what the medical treatment is or what the alternatives are. And we just feel that it would be just really a charade to sort of, even though the person might be nodding his head, we know he doesn't get it. And it's not fair to him, or it's not safe for him to put him in a situation where he can be exposed to that, to just saying yes to everything because he's trying to be nice and compliant. So at some point we need to think about guardianship, and that's guardianship is where the court really begins to get involved. Guardianship involves an individual, usually the parents, filing paperwork with the court, asking the court to review the situation and appoint typically a parent, but it could be somebody else, as the guardian of the individual. Now, it's a difficult process. It's a cumbersome process. The Department of Developmental Services, for one agency, has in the past been pretty good at helping people out. Because of the expense involved, they'll do it themselves, but they're much less able to do that now with the regional office attorneys, much less than they were. So it's really a problem for people. There may be some help through the courts, some legal aid capacity for doing this, but it's very limited. So if you are involved in that, though, what it involves is getting the clinical team report assembled. The report is a little different. They're still using some old labels. They use mental retardation as one of the labels, not intellectual disabilities, but the law still calls it mental retardation. Other categories don't fit cleanly anywhere. Autism is one. Mental illness sort of fits in. But the idea is that there's something clinically going on that's making the person interfering with his ability to do the things that he needs to do to evaluate options and make decisions.
Say if like some person if you go to court, how long does this process take?
Well, depends on if it's an emergency situation, then it can happen very quickly. If it's not, it's going to take some months. Some of you can start before 18. But let me say one thing about also about the guardianship, and that's that the court is very open to the idea of limited guardianship. And this actually can go through much more easily. In a limited guardianship, dealing with a person who has just specific areas of where everybody's really concerned. By and large, the person gets by through the day and through the week. They'd be working, going to school okay. But there's some specific areas, and the most common one is medical decision making. I mean, it's for all of us. I mean, who but another neurology specialist can really evaluate what a neurologist tells you, for options. So we're all in that boat. People with less developed capacities are going to be in a much worse shape for that, even in relatively minor things. So one form of guardianship that does tend to go through quite quickly is that if they're asking just for a limited guardianship, limited to medical decision making. So that, I think that's also the area where people are most at risk, and I think that's something that the court's really very comfortable with. So I think that's kind of what I want to say. Some cases or people or some descriptions of, yeah.
Once you have, if you decide to go to a different guardianship, can you go back in that system? Or
Yes.
It's a one-shot deal?
No, it's not a one-shot deal. You can go back to that and adjust it up or down, either way, or have it eliminated altogether. It's funny that I've had many people come to the office and they weren't aware of the fact that something had changed at 18. They were a child who grew up in the house, special needs, past 18, past 18 without any particular notice. They might be now 35, and they hear me or somebody say, "Look, once they're over 18, you as a parent don't have any authority anymore. They're legally on their own." And I'll get this horrified look. Oh my God! I got to run out and get a guardianship. And I'll ask them, wait. So it's been, what was my example, 37. So it's a lot of years, 19 years. So the person has been without a guardian for 19 years. And you did not have legal authority to make decisions. Let's think about what happened or didn't happen as a result of that. Was he forced into some medical procedure that you wouldn't have wanted him to have? Was he denied a medical procedure that you wanted him to get? If he got in some trouble with buying something he should have, were you able to get him out of it? Were things worked out informally to deal with these issues? Do people by and large listen to you as a parent because you have authority as a parent? Sort of appear to have authority as a parent. But sort of people, if you're dealing with a system that if you're dealing with a medical group, they know you, whether there's a technical need for guardianship may not come up at all. So, yes. Yeah.
What's the difference between guardianship and the dual power of attorney?
Good, great. Good. Question is about the difference between guardianship and a durable power of attorney. Guardianship is court. Only a court can order the guardianship. Power of attorney is just private. It's between you and the individual involved. So it's a huge difference. It's not quite as powerful, on the other hand. The person who signs a power of attorney can take it back. Whereas the court, the individual doesn't have any control over it. Only the judge can change it. But for most purposes, we just find that it's sufficient. In fact, if you have a power of attorney and a healthcare proxy, it's unlikely that the court would even give you guardianship. They would say that you've got stuff in place that should handle most things. Come back if there's a problem. So I really think that pursuing that avenue of thinking about a power of attorney and a healthcare proxy for an individual with special needs who has that basic understanding to be able to understand those things, I think is really the way to go for really almost everybody. Unless, if the person just can't sign that, can't understand that. Signing, I'm not sure, script, print, sign, a person could be blind and not be able to sign the paper, but, if the person has the ability to tell you to sign for him, that's enough. We're really not talking about physical capabilities, but mental ones.
Yeah,
Yes?
so there are parents here who are on the brink of having
students who are 18, well, what could they do now in order to figure that out?
Well, I think right now, I think before 18 is a good time to think of it. The SPED team is evaluating this issue presumably, and it's part of the transition planning. And sort of their ideas about whether the person has the ability to understand a healthcare proxy or durable power, I think is a way to start. They should be talking to their physician or social worker or counselor or somebody about this. Yes?
My daughter's going through it now. She's 18, and so with the school, you know, we first went to a doctor and she filled out paperwork, and then the school psychologist filled out paperwork, and then they also brought someone else, I think another clinician, to do the paperwork, and so now it's up to me to go to court. And I think the Brook Courthouse on Tuesdays has free services for
Oh,
guardianship.
good. Okay, great.
On Tuesdays, if you get that information, the Brook Courthouse.
It's the family probate court downtown.
It's in downtown.
Boston.
We can
It's
get
the
that
probate court in
information,
Boston.
put it up on the website.
That's great.
And then I can report back actually on how it went for me, because we haven't gone to court yet, but we're heading, I have all the paperwork done.
What time is this?
I'm in Dorchester, so I would go to the Brook Courthouse in Boston.
Yeah,
What time is it?
10 a.m. to 12
Oh,
p.m. It's on the 3rd floor outside of the register.
Yeah, and we'll get that information, we'll put it on the website.
Yeah, right. So this is, you know, it's sort of, things can go either way at age 18. I mean, I've people that I'm working with, where talking with the doctor, talking with the same people, we've decided that, well, you know, maybe we don't need guardianship. Maybe she has enough ability to go this other route. Let's try it first. You know, it has the, if the person, it can have some advantages for the person, you know, because she's still being treated as an adult.
So once the paperwork is done, how long does that process take?
Well, it's extremely, the power of attorney paperwork?
No, the guardianship.
Guardianship paperwork, well, that's extremely variable.
It took months for me to get all the paperwork.
Just to get the paperwork collected, right, and then it'll take months to
And
get it
so now I
through
have
the
to go
court.
to court, so I'm not sure how long that will take, but once I have it done, I would be happy to talk in front of the group to let them know how it was.
That would be
going
very interesting.
From A to Z, and how the whole process went, and
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, we have it's a new guardianship law, it's part of the problem. It's just a few years old, so it's really pretty experimental.
What law is
still.
that?
We keep making changes. Guardianship law,
Yeah.
it's new, I mean, it's new, we just, you know, it's maybe 3 years now. And it's brand new, the procedures are different, people have the right to have counsel appointed for them. All the reports and forms are all different, and the courts are not uniform in how they're approaching it. So, but this is the point, it can be evaluated either within the school context or within a clinical context. If you're a children's hospital and a part of a clinical group there, they have a guardianship, they have an ability to evaluate guardianships there.
Oh, I have a psychiatrist who prescribes the medicine.
Don't make me.
They probably.
So I have a question.
Yes,
So say a parent dies, you have guardianship, now the child's still alive,
right.
what happens?
Yeah, the question is if the parent dies or just loses the ability to be the guardian, then you do have to go back to court to get somebody else appointed. It's not a matter of completely starting over again, but you do need a substitution. We often look, if it's possible, we look for co-guardians. Sometimes the co-guardian may be a parent and a sibling. You know, I think that's a great combination. Deals with this issue if the parent dies. It also means that the child has the chance to develop a relationship with a sibling while the parent is still alive to sort of handle the whole thing. But then the child under guardianship is seeing the sibling in this other role. Agencies see the sibling in this other role. It's not somebody new coming on the scene. So I think that's a good way to deal with that issue in advance of need, if possible, if the family resources are there. Yes, ma'am.
I'm hearing a lot of different things in the future around different needs, but just the question is that some kids have a physical disability, some have a mental disability. What if you have a child that can function, but he has a learning disability?
All right, well, the issue is the way the learning disability affects his ability to make decisions.
Right.
For some kids, it makes them lousy readers or lousy in math. And that has nothing to do with guardianship. They don't have to be able to read or write or be good at it to make decisions. But some kids are going to have a problem where they really have trouble understanding what they see, remembering what they see, remembering what's said to them. Those relate much more to this ability to make decisions. So it could be, sort of moderate levels of concern, but very different.
And also you want to look at whether or not, you know your child best, but you also want to look at sort of what their cognitive testing has been across the years. And, guardianship is one of those things that you don't want your child to be taken advantage of. You want to make sure that they're not making financial decisions or medical decisions that they shouldn't be making, because you know that they don't have the skills to make prudent and, basically appropriate and thoughtful decisions. That's when you want to look at it. But so my daughter's significantly disabled, where she's so cognitively impacted that I could never do a power of attorney for her, because she doesn't know what a power of attorney is or what delegation of authority would mean. So it wouldn't be worth the paper that it was written on if someone were to challenge it. I don't know if anyone would ever challenge it, because I'm her parent.
Well, no, you really don't want. You don't want to do that.
Right. You don't want to do it because it's not going to exactly.
It's not going to work.
So guardianship is, people that are cognitively impaired, and it's going to impact the decision-making process. But even there's different levels of cognitive impairment, it's not just at that MRA, it's sort of what are the impacts of the disability on the child. And that's why Dawn's giving you the different types of guardianship, because it's not one or nothing. There's different types, and you look at what's the type of guardianship that I need for my child to make sure that his or her rights are protected and that no third party takes advantage of it. Because you don't want to be in the ER when your child's 18 years or older and they tell you can't make a decision for your child and you can't do anything about it.
Great points. Cognitive is a key, but not the only key. And another is emotional. People can be so afraid, so anxious, that they can't make good decisions about medical care.
Yeah, mental health issues.
They'll deny, services. They'll refuse services when it plainly is in their best interest to go through with them. So it's a variety of things. It's not the physical. You can accommodate the physical. You can accommodate vision. You can accommodate hearing. And in all these systems, there really are this idea of accommodating, of finding ways to get the person involved as much as possible in decisions is a real key. And agencies have a responsibility for doing that. Vision would be a problem if you can't get in the front door to get to the doctor to sign the consent form.
Yeah, and just to make it more understandable in terms of a parent, right? So if you have a child with a severe cognitive impairment, that's probably someone you need to look at having guardianship for. You have a child that has bipolar disorder or a mental health impact that affects their judgment at any given time. That's probably something you want to look at guardianship for. Children on the autism spectrum, it's really going to depend, because that varies greatly. Some children on the autism spectrum are brilliant, but they don't have any social or emotional skills, so then you might have to look at some areas of guardianship. Other kids on the autism spectrum are severely mentally retarded. We all understand what that means. So their kids you do want to look at guardianship for. It all depends what your child's disability is and how that disability impacts their decision making and their ability to communicate decisions. And I'm not saying just in terms of verbal output versus using a machine or writing it down. It's understanding what they're taking in, and then they can communicate back something that's responsive to what they're being told. So it all really does vary. So as parents, we all have to look at what is my child's disability, or what's the impact on my child as a result of that disability. It's not just the name of the disability, it's how it impacts your child.
Right. It's not the name. It's not what I was going to say. It's not the label. It's what's underlying the label. It could be very different labels, but it goes to this question. Yes, ma'am.
Testing, I know a lot of when you're testing, your daughter's transitioning, and the nose, they're only good for 6 months or whatever. I'm worried about support. If she's 17, you want to schedule it 17 and a half. I don't want to schedule it too early. I don't want to schedule it too late, because MassHealth will only pay for one within a certain amount of time. So I'm trying to figure out how long that paperwork is good legally, so that I can schedule the test and the paperwork will be good by the time the paperwork is started.
It depends. And it depends on a couple of things. If it's a developmental, like a mental retardation situation, then generally that's good for 6 months. If it's more of a mental illness situation, then it's good for a month. You really have to wait. You can file before 18, but this is something you really need to plan. You know, if there's an ability to get some advice at the courthouse, then this is exactly the question you should ask. My daughter's going to need this. When should I file? When should I get the reports? These are questions we go back to the clerks about, because they're the ones who are going to decide the thing eventually.
Do you have a business card?
I'm here for education, that's all.
So Mass,
Sure.
Social Security, are they gonna require, if my child's on Social Security, are
This is a good question that to do with Social Security. This is a good alternative to the guardianship thing. If the only income the person has coming in is from SSI or Social Security Disability or child's benefits, then Social Security has its own kind of guardianship tool to use to protect that money. You can get, someone can be appointed as a representative payee, rep payee, and then the checks come to that individual for deposit and use for the, they don't belong to that individual, but that person becomes the manager of that money. Let me just finish the thought. So that's a good, just like it's a good way of, and I have many clients who, that's the financial problem that they've got, is what's going to happen with those benefits. The rep payee way is a good way to handle that.
What are child benefits?
Child's benefits are if they, it's survivor's benefits. If a parent has died and they're minor children, not yet through high school, that's child's benefits. Child's benefits can continue after age 18 or after high school if the child is disabled and the parent is retired or disabled or deceased.
Oh, well, I'm retired. Well, I'm not working. I'm in school.
Yeah, but you're not a child.
Yeah, but it's like my son's like 16. So like
if someone is, as an adult, has a work record with Social Security and is eligible for Social Security disability benefits, then that person's child under age 18 or 19 is high school, has to do with high school graduation. It's usually 18, can be 19 if they haven't graduated high school, to be eligible for child's benefits. Parent, if there's a disabled father and a mother providing care for a minor, the mother may be eligible for mother's benefits.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot.
It's like, there was something that was it was a workshop I went to. It's called like a foster, like when they beyond, if they're special needs, like when they're beyond 18, it's like a foster grandparent, foster parent program.
I don't know. Any other regarding one word on ABLE? I know it was on the thing as something I was going to talk about. It's really a different topic. This is ABLE, A-B-L-E. It's a new federal law, not implemented yet, so it's just something to put a spotlight on. It's a new federal law that's going to allow families and individuals to hold money, let it accumulate without having to pay taxes on the interest, so that it can be used for the disabled individual in future years. It's going to be a way of saving money, even though different from the SSI asset limit, sort of separate from that, and also separate from taxes. We haven't seen the regulations have been issued, hasn't been implemented. Massachusetts is going to have its own version for Massachusetts state taxes, so stay tuned to that. It's going to be useful. It's going to be a useful, I think, piece for people to even to save small amounts of money for the future for special needs situations. I think we're.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. Sure.
At 16, my daughter's IEP meeting, I want to start getting the 688 referral started now. Would you say that's a good idea to get it started earlier?
Yep. 688 is sort of it was the state law that sort of set up this whole program of transition planning in schools, part of 766. It was just the statute.
How old is your daughter?
She's 16.
I
Yeah.
don't think they'll do it that early. It's too early.
No, it's not on the regulations.
Well, no, on the 2 years, but transition services, no, but she's saying
They
for
will
the
actually
688.
start it, but they will start getting the
referral
process.
to the-
If you
to an
push hard enough,
agency?
they
Yeah.
will start getting it, because I have
Yeah.
BPS helping me, and they will start. You do
Yeah,
have to do a little pushing.
Yeah. All right. Now this is a good point.
Okay.
Actually, there's a little piece in the.
I don't want to be.
Because I've seen
One of-
agencies say no, not yet, so.
Well,
that's good to know.
but even if it's not technically time, there's actually a piece in that one of the articles I have on some transition years talks about this guardianship, but also talks about that. One of the transitions has to do with transitions to adult services. And I think it's never too early to start that. What you want is at the time that they make the decision, you want them to know your daughter, to know the family, to know the situation. You want to be involved with them. There's a much greater chance of locking in at the right time. But sort of build those, go to those meetings. That's critical. Know your area office. You know, ask them for respite help. Ask them for anything they can give you to sort of get you on their radar.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is John Santamano, the Vice Chair of Boston SpedPac. Thanks for coming tonight. I just want to let you know that we're recording this, so if you missed anything and want to go back and watch it, you can. And then all the documents that are here tonight and additional ones are already on the website. And there's a page under the library called Accessing Services Post-BPS or After BPS. So they're already up on the website and they're live. The only problem right now is that they're PDFs, so they're not translatable, but we'll work on that too as we get going forward. So, next is Carolyn.
Yeah, and a couple of the documents that John put up on the website, couldn't copy them because they're just too lengthy, but like one of them is from the Department of Developmental Services. It's school days to work days, and I actually think it's a great document that sort of explains the whole process of moving from school services onto adult services. And it's definitely something that you want to take the time to read it at your leisure, sort of digest it, go back and look, because it is pretty substantial and it's a complex process. So the handout that I put together is just 12 pages and it's a bunch of different things. And really what it was to do is not to provide the framework for any specific discussion, but to give you different resources for you to be able to access. Like it talks about when your child's turning 18. You need to know that the decision-making process is going to transfer to your child. At your IEP meeting, your child can delegate in writing decision-making to you for purposes of the IEP. And you can do that with the team present. There's a specific form for that your special ed coordinator can provide for you, so that if you haven't looked at the issue of guardianship yet or the power of attorney, you can have your child delegate decision-making to you at your team meeting. So for IEP purposes, that will be taken care of right then, okay? Now, whether or not your child has the capacity to do that is a separate issue for you to take a look at. Also with regard to sort of going on to adult life, you know, you have to look at what is the 688 referral process. And the district can make a referral, 688 referral, and they should be doing that, but you can also do it yourself. You don't have to wait for them. You know, myself, I know that my daughter is, you know, the Department of Mental Retardation is now called the Department of Developmental Services. So my daughter's been enrolled there since she was 6 years old. So she's already in the queue, that they know that Mary Kain has, you know, disabilities and she's qualified for DDS. So she's in the queue that they know that she's coming up. She's going to be turning 22, thankfully not for another 6 years, but she's already in the queue. So look at what services does your child currently have with other agencies. Does your child get MassHealth? For MassHealth, you can get services through MassHealth for adult services. Now these are the more impacted population that I'm talking about, but also with regard to DDS, they provide support, community-based day support, which is support in the workplace, support to do like volunteerism, jobs, things of that nature. MassHealth is more of a day hab situation where it's more like working on functional skills like daily living skills, social communication, things of that nature. MassHealth won't pay for, you know, things out in the community, going to jobs and doing things like that. But look at the agencies that you're already connected with. Maybe you're connected with the Department of Mental Health. See what it is that they have in line for adult services, because the big difference is that at age 22 or when your child graduates, if they're younger, IEP services go away and there is no entitlement to adult services. Adult services are a benefit. There's no entitlement to them. So you want to get in line, because it's one of those issues of there's a lot of people in line, and once they run out of resources, then it's sorry, and the budget goes up and down every year. So you want to get your child in line and, you know, be in contact with case managers and get part of that referral process going, so that when your child does turn 22 or they graduate from school but they need more support, they're going to have a safety net. They're not going to just drop into an abyss and have nothing. So this is really an effort to say, how do you get prepared beyond BPS, but also what are other things that are available beyond BPS? So one of the things, and there's different resources listed on here, people can decide for them. It's been around for a few years, but all right, so for 2011 is the ARICA law. If you have a child on the autism spectrum, the issue of ABA services, but also evaluations for those services, those can now be covered by private insurance. In fact, it's mandated, except for certain types of insurance policies. MassHealth is excluded from the ARICA law. Okay, but there's new legislation that was passed in Massachusetts that will get MassHealth recipients coverage for ABA services, but it's pending federal approval right now. Right, Joanne? Is that correct? So
like that cross. What about Blue Cross Blue Shield?
then you have to look. You have to talk to your specific insurance provider and ask what coverage that you have. But the law is specific about the types of coverage, and then you have to look at what your policy is. Like some that are federally funded aren't necessarily. There's exclusions that apply. So you want to call your insurance company. But this is the first time that services for things like ABA services, which children on the autism spectrum need a lot of, are now being covered by private insurance. And not just the ABA services, but also the neuropsychological exams. Sorry, I just got braces today, so I'm having a hard time talking. Is that, different things in treatments, also PT, OT, speech, things of that nature are now being covered more broadly by insurance. And it's specifically for kids on the spectrum. So that's one of the things you want to look at. Do I have more coverage now than I didn't have? Or if I have MassHealth, what's the status of the MassHealth approval? Maybe it's going to go. In addition to that, if you only have MassHealth, there's called the Premium Assistance Program, where you contact MassHealth, you can sign up, you can get private insurance, and MassHealth will pay the premium. Like if you just have MassHealth and you could get Blue Cross, say through your employer or something, MassHealth will pay the premium cost that you would pay every week for your Blue Cross, because they want you to have Blue Cross and not just MassHealth. So you get a check for what you pay for your insurance from MassHealth to have that other insurance, but it has to be available to you. So that's another thing that you want to look into. Is that something else that I can get? Because
I got MassHealth and Medicare.
Okay. MassHealth and Medicare is sort of the same thing, one's federal, one's state. So both of those are issues where the ARICA law doesn't apply right now, and there's special legislation pending for that. Okay?
Can I ask something?
Yep.
So, the ARICA law only applies to children, not adults who are on the autism spectrum.
No, there's no, read the materials that I gave you. My understanding is that there is no age limit. Okay? But what applies to the person for coverage as an adult versus as a child under your policy, those are also things you need to look at. But, with regard to kids with disabilities, everybody needs to look at their own policy, because they're all different, they're all over the place. I can't say that one rule fits all, because even within the same, like Blue Cross, there's probably 5 different plans, and they have different exclusions in different plans. But that's why I have the 1-800 number on your card. If that's what you have, you call up and you say, what is the coverage, what is this? And this is how a lot of families across Massachusetts are now accessing additional resources. And you're paying for them through your premium, so you want to access as much as you can out of your insurance, especially while kids are young, because it does have the most impact to get them to more independence in life. Okay, so, but once the adult thing is a little bit tricky, but one of the things that was mentioned briefly, that I don't have a lot of information on at this meeting, but as I get more of it, we'll put it up on the website, is adult foster care. So, Dawn was talking about having co-guardianship. Look at the issue of adult foster care too, because you can have 2 parents in the home. One of them can have guardianship and the other one can be the adult foster care parent. The issue is that the person's not left alone for a certain number of hours a day. If your child qualifies, then you get a direct check for taking care of that child during those additional hours. So there's, these resources are meant to be out there for disabled individuals who need them. What we need to do is help parents access the appropriate resources that are available to our kids, whether they're young, they're teenagers, and even when they become an adult. So that's really what this workshop is trying to say. There's other services beyond BPS The services in BPS, yes, your child's entitled to them from age 3 up to 22, but life goes on after 22. And even during the time that you're in BPS, if you can be accessing other resources for the benefit of your child, then you want to do that. You know, one of the things that I have for my child is it was called a DMR intervention plan, which was to say, it's basically a prevention plan to, if you think your child might be someone that will eventually have to go into a residential setting because their needs are so great, then basically you get extra funding to prevent that from happening, that will pay for additional services for your child from the age 6 up. And this is another one of those services that you gotta get in line to get it. Unfortunately, that program has been cut across the years, so there's really not a lot of plans being offered, but the program is still funded. So if your child is registered with DDS, what you want to call and say is there any additional funding available to my child, whether or not they have an actual plan? Because every year when they go through the fiscal reconciliation, and the fiscal year runs from July 1 to July 1, so especially in June, there's money that's been untapped. If parents have receipts for things they bought their children, specialized equipment, they've paid the services, a lot of that, if there's additional funding, you can get reimbursed for it. But your child has to be registered with the agency. So if your child's not registered, get them registered. If you think that they qualify, they'll do their own evaluation, they'll let you know, and it doesn't cost anything. So those are the services you want to take advantage of, is the ones that don't cost anything to get a hold of for your child. If your child has MassHealth and your child has issues with independent functioning, do you get PCA services, personal care attendant? Someone will come in and evaluate your child. They'll look at what their needs are. Do they need help with dressing, with toileting, with feeding, showering, you know, all those things. And as they get older, there's a broader range of things that your child, you know, sort of what would your child be expected to be able to do at a certain age level that they're clearly not able to do, and so they need somebody's assistance to do that. You'll get hours for that. If your child needs nursing, because maybe they have a seizure disorder or some significant medical issue, you can also get nursing hours through MassHealth. So these are all things that you want to explore, because it's not, if you have an IEP, then you don't get them. They're all separate. All of our agencies run their own silos, and what you want to say is, am I hitting every box that my kid is eligible for to make sure that I'm maximizing what my child gets during the time that they're eligible? Because things do change with age, so you want to keep an eye on that, and you want to get them in line. But adult services, as soon as possible, because if they're not in the queue, then they're further back in the line once you do sign them up. So that's something to bear in mind. Sign them up with DDS, have them evaluated, even if they can't get a plan with, like, you know, certain amount of money every year. There's also the issue of there's always extra funding at the end of the year, and if it doesn't get used, it goes back into the state coffers. So you want to tap that as much as possible. Yes, ma'am.
I am the Spanish interpreter for this mother.
Okay.
And she has a question. Her daughter she has Down syndrome. She's 8 years old, and she needs a food support. She called MassHealth, and MassHealth informed her that she has only $200 per year, and which is not enough for the food support.
Like AFOs that go in your shoe, the foot support, braces.
Para las piernitas, porque son flexibles, porque ya casi no camina porque se le voltea mucho la pierna.
She cannot walk well because her legs don't have any stability.
Well, so, okay, I don't know specifically what MassHealth is telling her with regard to sort of a cap on it, but that would be considered durable medical equipment, because my little one wore them for years. But MassHealth should cover that, and she should be able to get them through Children's Hospital.
Children's Hospital also.
Hold on 1 second.
Children's Hospital didn't provide that for her either. She went there. ¿Qué pasó con Children's Hospital? Ay, no te lo dieron.
No, pues allá me llamaron y me dijeron que no me podían dar los soportes porque el seguro no los cubría.
Children's Hospital said that they couldn't provide this food support because the insurance doesn't cover it. MassHealth doesn't cover it.
I can't, you know, what I would tell you is this, is that when MassHealth makes any decision, you have the right to appeal. Okay, so the issue of the braces is, you have to get a prescription for it. And then because it's medically necessary, and the doctor should write a letter saying that it's medically necessary, and then maybe she could get a waiver. So, you know, because I mean,
So she needs to submit,
call MassHealth and tell them she wants to appeal or find out what her rights are if they're not covering something specific. So that's another thing with MassHealth is that, so I don't mind sharing personal information, my husband might, but he's not here, so. My little girl is significantly impacted, so she's 15 years old, she's not toilet trained, okay? But we have Blue Cross through his insurance, and then we have MassHealth as a supplement, she has a lot of needs. So we pay a premium for MassHealth, in addition to the regular insurance, but through MassHealth, we get pull-ups delivered to our door every month. But not everybody knows about this service, so that's why I'm telling you here. They'll deliver the pull-ups to your door and also the pads that go on the bed. So if your child's not toilet trained, you're not going to BJ's or Shop and Shop or whatever and buying the pull-ups. You can say you know that, but there's a lot of people that don't know that, and I don't know about everybody else. But the best information I ever found out when I had a handicapped child was from other mothers. And it had already been through the process before, no offense, dads, you too, but, you know, it was, that's just gonna give it to you straight up, what do you need to know, what do you need to do? Because there is no, our kids do not come with a handbook to say, have a handicapped child, these are all the steps that you need to take. It's this huge maze out there, none of it's easy, it's a million different phone calls, but it's also perseverance. Perseverance will get you what you need to get, and you just need to know what you're eligible for, and you know that's why the information on the website, there's different websites on here for you to contact, there's phone numbers, it's one of those, I can't tell you exactly what each individual child is going to be entitled to, but I can give you all the tools to find out what your child's entitled to, and then you need to follow up and access as much as you feel that you need. Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that my child wasn't, so I know a lot of our children can go and apply for the ride.
Yes.
They will be eligible for the ride, and these kids are gonna have to get to work. So we just free ourselves up. The ride will pick them up at the door and take them to wherever they need to go. So I got my daughter at that, and she can go out next door activity. So that's another thing that she can go.
Yeah, and anybody else, throw them up if you know more things you don't know. Regina? Oh, here's our school committee member, Miss Regina Robinson.
I also learned that with the PCAs, a family member who's not a parent can be hired to do the PCA.
My mother's my PCA. Nana does it, you know, so.
In the family, and it really has helped. In the older
Same with adult foster care, when they get old, you know.
When they're at the age to have a part-time job, they can also do PCA. So then that encourages the sibling relationship that could outlive you.
And obviously SSI is something you want to be looking into. If your child's not eligible to be working, they're disabled, they're registered for MassHealth, that's sort of part of the process. If they're eligible for MassHealth, that means they're pretty much eligible for Medicaid unless there's something odd going on with the situation. You want to get them signed up to SSI as soon as they're eligible. On their 18th birthday, you want to be at the Social Security office signing up for SSI. As an adult. As an adult, not as a child.
Oh, really?
Certain children can get it depending on family income, their disability. That's a separate issue. We're talking about SSI for your child, where the check is for your child. Yeah.
I just wanted to add that I have a child in a residential program, and she's 13, and she gets Social Security. So if you're in your child's in residential, nobody tells you this, but they're able to get, you petition for it, and they won't get as much as the Social Security amount, because what the government takes is the food and shelter out of it, but they still get a check.
Still something.
Still
I
something.
have a question. It's like my son's already on SSI, so.
Okay.
But I'm his payee, so when he gets 18, does it still go on?
Well, it would be a difference between a child benefit and an adult benefit, and you'd have to talk to Social Security about that, whether or not you are designated legally as the payee. You know, they're all different intricacies to each one, but, you know, Social Security knows the answer to that. I don't.
And
So I haven't
also,
crossed that
for
bridge
this
yet.
adult foster parent program, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like, what is that about exactly?
I don't have that much information about it yet, but I heard about it, so we'll find out more information and we'll put it up on the website. Yes, ma'am.
Is your child allowed to have a savings account? And if so, how much money?
So one of the things that Dawn brought up briefly is, because it's not in effect yet, but it's coming into effect, is a new law. It's called the ABLE law, which allows your child to, for you to put money away for your child and for that not to go against their Social Security benefits. So the laws are actually catching up to the population that actually exists in this world. So they're starting to develop things that, you know, our kids need, and it's not going to penalize them. Like, that's always one of the things I would say is, you know, someone would say, well, I want to give Mary whatever, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know how much she's allowed to have in an account before she becomes ineligible for other stuff, you know what I mean? So that's something that you want to, depending on your child's age, you're looking at, you know, when they're a child, they're okay. But when they become an adult, the amount of money that's in their name individually can impact their eligibility for services. So you want to talk to DDS about that, you want to talk to Social Security, and when they go to work, if they, you know, if they get like a little part-time job, you want to make sure that you know how much they can earn before it starts knocking down their Social Security.
Right
because
now, I believe it's 2,000.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
I know.
2,000 a month?
No, a year.
No, 2,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, again, I am the Spanish interpreter for
Right.
this mother.
Yep.
And these two ladies, they have a question regarding to a voicemail that was left at home by the school regarding to an after-school program by MassHealth. Is that?
O la escuela.
Yeah. Is that, does MassHealth has an after-school program?
No, is Cindy still there? Oh, does anyone know about MassHealth offering a after-school program in BPS?
No, I heard about DDS offering one.
Where, ma'am? Where?
The school?
Yeah, what school?
¿Dónde?
East Boston, la mía va la Kennedy School.
Kennedy School
The
in East
Kennedy
Boston.
School in East Boston?
And yeah, just that
Jackson.
stepping stone, I think it's something else.
Jackson Lane in Brighton.
Well, yeah,
And Humana School.
We can maybe question back to the office.
yeah, we'll have to look into that, so, you know, we can follow up. They just have to, do we have issue forms tonight? Maybe somewhere. John? John, do you have any issue forms with you?
Website's always better. No, that's fine. I have them.
I just, they're Spanish speaking.
Oh, that's fine.
And also, this mom, she has a child with Down syndrome, and she wants to know why at the school, if you can answer that question, the girl received only 2 hours of classes a day.
Yeah. Okay.
Her daughter.
Okay, so she needs to go and talk to someone at BPS, and you might need to go with her to interpret. So Sandy, one of the questions was, is MassHealth offering, they got a voicemail saying MassHealth was offering an after-school program over at the Kennedy?
At the Kennedy.
Yeah, the Kennedy School.
Kennedy? Yeah. Okay, I don't know anything about it. I can definitely, if I can take your contact info, I can find out some information. and get
Yeah.
it tomorrow.
Okay.
That-
You want them to fill this out?
Yes.
Yeah, just your information.
And this mom right here, she needs to talk to someone because she has an 8-year-old and she's saying she's getting 2 hours of services.
No.
Oh, this one, okay.
2 hours of service.
So it would depend on age and stuff, but BPS is here, so she should go and talk to one of them. Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
And-
thank you.
Okay, so anybody else have any tidbits of information they want to share, parent to parent? Yes, ma'am. So PCA services, if you have MassHealth, yeah, you can call, yeah, if you have MassHealth, that's how you get PCA services.
1-800-359-359.
Actually, the woman was gonna come tonight from the PCA services, but she had to cancel, so we can put that information up on the website too.
And what's on 1-800?
Personal care attendant. So basically, the parent hires somebody to work with their child,
7570.
fill out the timesheet, and the check goes directly to the person.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a lot of money, but every little bit helps.
$13
That's
an
my
hour.
opinion.
I already have hours.
All right, thank you all for coming this evening.
Thank you. Bye.